Hi everyone, so for today we are learning how to make a pasta sauce. Now this is going to be a tomato based pasta sauce. I'm using a variety of different ingredients that you can adapt to your own particular recipe, so you don't have to do exactly the same ones as I do as long as it's a tomato based sauce. So the first thing I have got is an onion. You could use a red onion, you could swap this for a different vegetable of your choice if you wanted to. So the first thing with an onion is you need to peel this. So you can either start peeling it just like that, or another way to do it is cut it in half, like that, which then makes it easier to peel off all this brown skin. Now on your table, about one between two or a couple each, you are going to have a bowl, and that bowl is going to be your waste bowl. So it can be a red bowl that we've got in the kitchens, it can be a glass cut bowl, basically just a bowl to prevent you from having to keep walking to the bin every time you've got a bit of waste. So you peel off your onion skin. You might as well put it straight in the bowl. You don't have to have the bowl underneath, so you might have to scrape off your chopping board or something like that. Your first thing is peeling the onion. Make sure all the bits of onion skin are off of your chopping board so they don't end up getting put into your dish. So then with this we're going to use the claw grip. The claw grip, remember, is like this and your fingers in a claw. Got on here a couple of bits of onion, so I just get rid of those. So step one is using the claw grip, holding it like this, and your knife firmly goes down to cut through your onion. Now you can do this in dices or you can do arcs. I'll show you both methods and you can then make your decision about which one you'd like to use. So to do the arcs, you are effectively using the claw grip the whole way along. Now we've cut this in half already, so it's a nice stable surface. Like so. Now when you get to the end, just be very careful in case it slips, and securely cut through. Okay, this bit then can go in your waste. So the other version is doing it in dices. So again, you just peel off my onion very quickly. So you're peeling a just normal brown onion until you get to this white layer. If you are using a purple onion, or a red onion, sorry, you're going right through until you get to the purple shiny layer in the middle. So you'll find that the red onion skin, the purple on the outside is quite dull, and when you end up cutting it and going through and peeling back the layers, it's the shiny layer that you're then using from. So again, claw grip to cut off the end part. Now for this one, I'm then going to use the bridge grip, which is basically me making a bridge with my hand and then the knife cuts in the middle so my fingers are well away. I'm cutting through here, but I'm stopping about here. And the reason I'm doing that is so it can all stay together. So cutting through, so thin slices, make sure your fingers are well out the way, like that. Okay, and then hold it here with your claw grip. What you should find is that all of these are sort of separated but still joined together at the end, so they haven't ended up falling right apart. So then you can use your claw grip to make these into dices. So it's totally up to you which version you want to do. Like I said, you might want to adapt the ingredients, in which case you might not want to do either of these versions. So make sure it's unique to you, this recipe. So that can then brush off my knife. So this is your difference. So These ones here are your arcs, and then if you want dices, they end up really small like this. So totally up to you which one you choose. So when you've cut up all your onion, you might want to put that to one side, and then we can use this chopping board for our meat. So I've got some bacon. So I've got 2 rashers of bacon here that I'm going to use with this pasta dish. I am going to cut all of my vegetables first, just to ensure that I prevent cross-contamination. So if I've cut my vegetables first, I'm then making sure it doesn't touch the raw meat. If you do it the other way, then you're going to have to end up washing your chopping board and washing your knife. So if we do it with the vegetables first, that prevents unnecessary washing up. So with this, again, I've got both my rashers here. You would probably want to use the claw grip and cut smoothly through it, either into strips or cubes. Like so. And when we put these in the saucepan, they will then end up separating as well, because I've currently got 2 layers. So it's really important to hold this steady when you're working through it. So once I've done it that way, I can either turn it round or turn myself around, and then I'm cutting through these. Now be careful, because the bacon can be quite slippery. You don't have to use bacon, you don't have to use meat. You might want to use a meat substitute like corn or something like that, and you can do that, that's fine. Or you might choose to bring in a different kind of meat. But it's really good to have you guys showing the skill of how to prepare different ingredients. So I would really like it if you could bring in something like that, because it really shows off a wide range of skills that you're showing. So when you've done this, you are then going to go and get your saucepan ready. So you're going to need a saucepan. You are also going to need some oil in that pan. I will provide the oil, so there's no need to bring any of that in. And what you're going to need is a small coating on the bottom of your pan, just like that. Not too much, just needs to cover the very bottom of your pan. And then you can start putting in your bacon. Okay, so just get that sorted. When you're putting this into your pan, you should probably do this at your desk. It just prevents anything unnecessarily being spilt on the hob, etc. And it could ensures that there's not quite so much cleanup required. So you might hold over and then just use your knife to scrape it in. You can use your hands, but obviously after you've touched the bacon, make sure you've then gone to wash your hands before preparing or touching anything else. So that's in there like that. You're then going to need a wooden spoon to stir this. You're going to need to turn your hob on as well. Okay, so you're holding the saucepan with your hand so it doesn't end up slipping or anything like that, and you are stirring this bacon. What you should find is that your bacon will start changing colour as it heats up. So you're looking and listening and paying attention to the different smells and things of the bacon. It should start sizzling. If it starts spitting, you're going to need to turn the heat down. So I'd have it on a mid-heat at first, and then if you find that it's spitting or anything like that, just turn it down slightly. Remember, if you are using anything that is an electric hob, it's going to take longer to warm up, but then also longer to cool down. So just bear that in mind when we're preparing this. So I'm looking and paying attention to my senses. So at the moment I should be able to start seeing that this is starting to change colour. And when it's fully changed colour, then I can start adding in my other ingredients. So I can see now that my bacon's nearly finished changing colour. So that's the point that I can then start adding in my other ingredients. This is the point that you would add any sort of hard vegetables. And you can either add it here, or you might want to get a pot stand and take your pot stand to your desk in order to put it in safely without the risk of any of it falling on the hob or anything like that. So onion going in. Obviously I would expect you to just do one type of onion. You don't have to do dices and arcs, just pick one that you think would best suit the dish that you want to make, and then stir all that in. So break up the bits of onion so they're all separated so they can cook themselves thoroughly. And you're stirring, don't just leave it unattended, it will start burning on the bottom. You need to keep stirring constantly. So with the onion, what I'm looking for is it to go soft. So when it becomes a lot more malleable and it starts moving easier, and feel with my spoon when it's soft, then is your chance to start adding in your tomatoes. That's your chopped tomatoes. Please bring in chopped tomatoes in a tin. Rather than something like passata. We don't want that, we want chopped tomatoes for this particular dish. So you might want to turn it off when you put in your chopped tomatoes. Reason for that is we've got quite a hot pan. So have a think, why might we need to have our hob turned off for adding our chopped tomatoes? Okay, so with your chopped tomatoes, you will need to demonstrate the skill of opening a tin. So there's two types of tins that you can get. So there's this one here that doesn't have a ring pull on, and you would need a tin opener to open that. So usually the little silver ones are the best, and it has a pointy bit that we kind of sort of refer to as the bit that cuts, or the dagger, and it sort of goes around and you twist and point it down, and then it will open your tin for you. The other version is this one, which is the ring pull, and for this one you might want to use a fairly blunt knife. Don't use one of the sharp knives so you'll end up cutting yourself, to pull up the ring pull. If you can do it with your hand, brilliant, but you might just want to, if you're struggling, just insert that underneath just so you can sort of get your fingers under there to pull it up. So this bit pulls up like that. This hand then needs to hold it steady with your thumb roughly here, and then with your fingers here you are pulling the can lid upwards and backwards. So it should get to that point. You don't have to do it all the way, but you can if you want to. Some of you might find it easiest to do this part where you open the can at the very, very beginning. That prevents you ending up with sort of hands that are dirty or slippery. Use it after cutting your bacon or your onions or anything like that. But it also means that as soon as your things are cooked, you can literally just take your tin to your saucepan and put it in. So it's advisable to do this stage of opening your can at the very beginning. So you might want a pot stand on your desk for doing this, and like I said, please have your saucepan off of the heat for this, just because if the pan is hot and we're adding this liquid into it, it's going to hit the bottom of the pan and then it tends to spray up, which is both needs basically cleaning for you, but also it could hurt you as well. So just be aware of that. So you're tipping it in. Obviously be aware not to touch the side of the pan because that's obviously hot. So just pay attention to those. You might want to rinse the can out and just get the last bits, but it's not necessary. Remember, with this tin, all around here is sharp, especially with the ones that you use the can openers for. So just be aware of that when you're preparing this dish. Other things you might like to include in there is some garlic. So you could bring in a bowl of garlic. You probably only want a clove in something like this. So this is one I've already used a couple of cloves from. So you would literally just peel it like that. You wouldn't put this whole thing in, just a clove. So this is a clove of garlic. And that you can then peel, a bit like the onion, so the skin comes off of that. Until you get to the really smooth cream layer. So it's a little bit like the onion in that regard. You peel that off. And you might want to then put this in a crusher, or if you don't have a crusher, you can use the side of a knife. So at school we have got the crushers. Effectively you just put it in and squeeze, and then it's just goes into your mixture and it will stir in and sort of enhance the flavour, let's say. So like I said, this can then go in the garlic crusher, and then we would just put in the bits that come out of the crusher into our mixture. It needs to be crushed so it releases its flavour. If you just put it in like that, some person in their pasta is just going to end up with a big mouthful of garlic, which is not what we want. We want to end up flavouring the whole dish rather than just a small portion. So once this is all in, you can then turn yours back on. You then need to mix everything up to ensure that it's all coated and you haven't just got separate sections of each bit. Now this is going to be left to do something called simmering. Now why don't you have a chat in your groups and just have a think about what simmering is for a second. So I'm stirring just at this beginning part just to check that it doesn't end up getting itself stuck to the bottom. But what we're going to do is leave it on a low heat. So simmering should be tinsy little bubbles that effectively is going to reduce what this looks like. So it's at the moment it's quite watery, you should be able to see. We want it to be a lot thicker, so it's not quite as watery as this. So we simmer it for about 10 to 15 minutes, as long as sort of we've got. You should be able to see that it's simmering because it should show little bubbles, but we should also be able to see and start seeing steam rising as the water evaporates from this sauce. So whilst this is simmering, if you wanted to add any sort of herbs, you could add that at this point. Obviously just stir them in. If you have finished adding your ingredients, then you need to start going and washing up and tidying up. We're going to leave the saucepan on the hob to simmer. Just be aware that when you're moving around the room, there's a lot of saucepans there, so make sure that your saucepan handle is tucked out the way so somebody can't accidentally knock it and have an accident. Just really think about the safety element of that. If you wanted to bring in something like some pasta or some spaghetti to go with this dish, you could bring that in as well. I'd like to really think about how you would like this dish to look at the end. So because this is an assessed practical, you will be needing to think about the presentation and how you're going to lay this out. So you might want to bring yourself in sort of decoration for the top, say some bay leaves or something like that, just to make it look of a restaurant quality. If you wanted to bring in sort of separate little bowls or a plate that you wanted to present it in, you could do that as well, but just remember to bring something in that you can take it home in as well. Remember, I'm looking specifically to see whether you can adapt this recipe. I am giving you the basic version of what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for you to have sort of extra ingredients added in. You can think about your recipe, all of those kinds of things. If it's bubbling lots like this, you might just want to reduce the heat slightly, because remember, it's only simmering and we're not trying to boil it here, so we're just simmering it. So just small little bubbles is what we're looking for, and you should be able to see that there's steam rising up from this. So like I said, if you wanted to bring yourself in any pasta, you can do that. Make sure it's ready cooked like you did for your cheesy pasta, or like you will do for your cheesy pasta. It should be about 100 grams, but just make sure that you've already boiled it at home, so it's just ready to be mixed into the dish. You could present it separately, so you could have like little bowls for the pasta and one for the sauce. You could have the pasta at the bottom with the sauce poured over the top, that's fine as well. Or you might want to bring in a bit of parmesan, or just something to really think about the presentation of this dish. Remember, the ingredients are 100% up to you. You need to think about what you would like. As long as it's a tomato based sauce, within reason you can add different ingredients that you might come up with, and just consider what might taste nice for you as a family. I would like to see, if possible, you preparing some meat, but think about what's best for you. So if you're a vegetarian family, you might want to think about corn, etc. Okay, so when it comes to either transferring this to a container for you to take it home in, or if you're presenting it on a plate or something like that, then you need to be very, very careful how you're putting it into these things. So first of all, you need a secure flat surface. So this needs to be flat there. You might need to ask somebody else's help. And so these saucepans, when they've got quite full, they can be quite heavy. So what you're doing is you're tipping it to the side and then pushing with the spoon and pouring it into the Tupperware. What you might find useful is if you ask somebody else to hold the saucepan for you whilst you make sure all of the contents of the saucepan ended up in here. So you could do that. Obviously, when you're holding it, you can only hold this handle because obviously this part is all hot. So just be aware of that when you're tipping it in, because I don't want any accidents in our classroom. So the expectations for the end of the lesson is that all of your dish should be in either a Tupperware or something that you can take it securely home in. So you might want to consider the presentation. You will need to make sure that everything that you've been using has been tidied up, washed and put away. When you are washing up your saucepan, it can end up with lots of tomato sauce left in there. You will need to wash it a few times. So just be aware that when you are completing that, it is not enough to just rinse it once. Number one, the tea towels will end up stained orange or red, but also we need to make sure that they are clean for somebody else who might be preparing their own dish. and they might be doing it for, say, a GCSE, or it might be something else that is a paler colour, which obviously doesn't need your tomato sauce in there. So please be very considerate and treat the room as you would like your own kitchen to be treated.